Hello, hello, hello. Good evening to all. I am Fred Feliciano, the CEO of Critical Conversations HR. And tonight we have a very important message. Tonight we will be discussing happy hour harassment. This message is really a message to managers, and there are some messages in there too for employees as well. So let me go over the agenda for today with you. So, Critical Conversations HR is a human resources consulting and education training company. Our goal is to transform workplaces one person at a time. Our agenda for today will be going over the mission of Critical Conversations HR. I will talk to you about my background, and then we'll go straight into the topic. I'll give you some realizations about employers having social hour events with alcohol. I'll go into some other events. I'll speak about uh, taking harassment complaints seriously, and then afterward, if anyone wants to get on and ask a question and get on with me live, I'll have you come on. I'll be posting a link in the chat when the presentation is done. And any HR question you have, I'd love to hear from you and answer your questions. So, what is the mission of Critical Conversations HR? That is to transform workplaces to where both employees and managers are respected, positively coached, and have the opportunity to thrive. So my goal is to work with both employees and work with managers as well. We all know the impact that managers have on employees, but also I've worked with so many employees throughout the 25 years, my 25 years of doing HR, and I've helped them to navigate their workplace circumstances, help them develop a better relationship with their supervisors, and in some cases, I've coached people to leave their current employers or to leave their current bosses. So, in terms of my background, so I started off my professional career working as a director of direct care for a group home facility in New York City. There, I was what we call a therapeutic crisis intervention trainer, which stands for, well, TCI, therapeutic crisis intervention. I taught my staff de-escalation techniques. I taught them counseling, and I taught them physical restraint as well, which is always a last option. But unfortunately, when you work with boys in crisis, you may have to do some physical restraints. So doing direct social services, I got burned out pretty quickly. And during that time, I was dating someone who did HR for a law firm. And she told me her story, how she loves doing HR, and she recommended that I try human resources. And at the time, I was doing a lot of training, I was doing a lot of recruiting, hiring of direct care staff, and then I ended up transitioning to human resources, and I've worked predominantly in the nonprofit sector. Another thing about me in terms of credentials, I have something called an Employee Complaint Handling Certificate from Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations. I've been in the field of HR for over 25 years. I've been doing recruitment, compliance, employee relations, progressive discipline, and the aspects of HR that I enjoy the most are the aspects that motivated me to start this company. And that's really progressive discipline and coaching and helping managers manage their employees. So I figured it might be good if I tell you a story. So back when I was in college, I was the president of my student government association. And at the time, I had a vice president, and basically, we had a party on campus. It was my inauguration party. And, there ended up being alcohol. on campus. And, but honestly, that was pretty common. We wasn't supposed to do it. But, college students, we drank. And as a result of that party, my best friend, who was my VP, excuse me, he had an allegation of harassment. And this woman that accused him of inappropriate touching basically said while they were dancing, he had groped her, he had tried to kiss her very forcibly, and that ended up in a couple things happening to my friend. And he ended up basically having to leave his role as VP of student government, and he ended up getting kicked out of school. There was an internal investigation. He spoke, and they ended up believing her. So he ended up stop being my friend because he felt that I didn't advocate for him during that time. And my stance was at that time was that I'm the head of student government. I have to be very careful. I didn't see what happened. I don't know if he did indeed touch her, if he, did anything. I didn't know. I didn't know. He ended up committing suicide. The first time he jumped off a building, and he wasn't successful. He ended up breaking his leg. And then about a couple months after that, actually, he tried again, and he was able to carry out what he wanted to do, and he passed away, and he died. And the reason why I bring up this story is because this was a college party. Um, the stakes were lower during this time, and so the stakes were lower during this time. And imagine your workplaces where you're earning a living and you have a lot at stake, right? So I always caution all of my associates, all of my friends, people who I care about, whenever they end up going to work functions, that they need to be very, very careful. Um, because a work function is not it's not like a party with friends or family. And even in that respect, you still need to be very careful, and you need to be very cautious, both as a woman or as a man. Okay. So I tell you that story just to say that what happens at social events, there's consequences to it. And for my buddy, he ended up taking his own life, and that was devastating to everyone who cared about him. And a lot of us didn't have the opportunity to say bye. So when it comes to workplaces, there's a lot at stake here. So we need to be very, very careful. So I want to go over with you some realizations, and these realizations have come from working in HR for close to 25 years. Okay, I have had to be the HR person who put together a holiday party or a happy hour event with the intention of trying to bring people together. Unfortunately, something that's excuse me, something that's intended to bring people together could really, drive people apart. Okay, or a major conflict can come from it. So, the purpose of this live stream is to share with you some of my realizations, and really give a warning to managers. So we will get into it now. Here's some realizations for you. Happy hours and work social events are an extension of the workplace. No longer can you believe that if you go to a bar or you go to a work function, a restaurant, that is not the workplace. That is the workplace. That's the extension of the workplace. Just like if you're a baseball player, professional baseball player, and you go from your home field and you go to another state and you play, let's say in Colorado, right? That is your place of employment. That's where you work. It may not be your primary place, but that's a place where you work. And these places where you're having these social events, that's an extension of the workplace. So don't for any minute think that these places don't count toward you. Company policies and codes of conduct extend outside of the physical walls where you perform your work. Okay. So if you're in an office building, your company has a set of policies and procedures. Those policies and procedures and practices don't necessarily leave you because you perform that work in a different place or there's a work function. Those policies don't stop being policies and they extend to those circumstances, to those environments. And ultimately, any place where you interact with your coworkers is an extension of the workplace. I don't care if you go down the street, have coffee, during your lunch hour or, you take a break. That's an extension of your workplace. So, I can't tell you how many times that people have said, X, Y, and Z happened. Someone who's been accused of something in terms of harassment has said, this didn't happen at work. It didn't happen at work. It happened outside of work. And so, what people come to the realization after they've had a conversation with HR, after they've been investigated, and sometimes after they've been terminated, is that it doesn't matter that this happened outside of the physical walls of where you typically work. It still counts. Okay. Another realization that I need to share with you, and this may be tough for some, because ultimately what drives us as human beings is the need for connection, is the need to be around other people, the need to be liked, the need to be accepted. Okay. So understand this, that your coworkers and your managers, they are not your friends. And in some cases, you have individuals who only have friends at work and only have close associates at work, whether it be coworkers, managers, and just understand that's a different type of relationship that you have. In some cases, individuals place the same level of trust they would with a family member or friend outside of work. And I'm not saying you cannot be friendly or have a certain level of trust. You can't share aspects of your life, but understand that this is someone who works at your organization and they may not truly be your friend. They may be your friend while you are working at the company. And the moment you leave or they leave, that, excuse me, that interaction is not there. It stops. So this is really for managers because I've seen managers who end up picking friends from people that they supervise, which is really a big red flag. Your role as a manager is to be a coach or a mentor to the staff that you supervise. And this does not mean that you cannot care for your employees or have a certain level of empathy for your staff. It doesn't mean that. But you are at you are at an advantage in that friendship because you have power over them. And typically friendships are more on an equal playing field. And someone who's a friend typically doesn't have the authority to end your job. Also another realization for managers is that if you're very friendly with the people that you supervise, is that the perception of favorites will be there. People will believe um, that this person may get better assignments because they're friendly with you, and because they don't have that relationship with you, they will feel that they're being shafted which could potentially open up the door to a sexual harassment complaint. And this is something you want to avoid. Okay. Uh, I want to speak a little bit. Uh, I want to speak a little bit now about social events. Okay, alcohol. In my opinion, nothing good has ever come from consuming alcohol. Um, in terms of alcohol and an open bar, in my experience, I've learned that's a pretty big no-no, having an open bar. I know these large corporations with a lot of money can easily do that. I have typically steered employers away from doing an open bar, and I've tended to push them toward a cash bar because in terms of an open bar, people just people get out of control. They truly get out of control. If you're, I mentioned before that part of my role in some organizations was to organize events. So typically, as an HR person, if you're hearing this, you should just be sure that the vendor, the facility, has proper bartender training for the staff in terms of when they're able to identify someone is drunk, someone has had too much to drink. And another piece of advice in terms of alcohol consumption at events is you should limit the number of drinks that people have. If you yourself are, giving out drink tickets or stuff of that nature, if you're an employee hearing this, you should number the limit of drinks that you have yourself. Self limit yourself. Because when it comes to music and dancing and touching, people start to take some liberties that they may not have taken because they didn't have the alcoholic courage. Okay. Another thing about social events and conferences is that, and I've seen employers do less and less of this now. Prior, there used to be the expectation is you would have two employees in the same room. I say you never, never do that. I don't care what, if they're the same gender, same sex, doesn't matter. Every person who you're sending out to a conference or work event should have their own hotel. There should be no sharing. I've been in situations where that was the expectation, is that you would share a room with somebody, and I've said, "You know what? I'll pay the extra money for a room. Honestly, I don't like sharing a room with nobody." Point blank. And that's how you avoid a lot of conflicts. Transportation, an employer should consider transportation to and from events, consider weeknight or late afternoon events, where typically alcohol consumption would be less. And, typically, an employer as a manager, you should ensure that your company has a freedom from harassment policy. You want to call it sexual harassment policy. You want to be sure that your managers and your employees have it, they have a copy of it, and oftentimes it doesn't hurt to send a reminder out. Make sure that people are familiar with it. All of your new hires should receive it and undergo training. So for managers, you should take complaints seriously, and that's what I'm gonna be discussing next. Um, so you should always ensure that all of your managers are trained outside of employees, meaning that they have a separate manager training due to a higher level of ownership and reporting responsibility that they have. Whether it be an outside consultant that's coming in to train your staff. There are many organizations out there that will use an online platform. And if you're an employer and you have directors and liability insurance, 9 times out of 10, your directors and liabilities insurance will have an online platform that you can use for free, where you can train your managers and train your employees on harassment. Another thing about this is typically once you roll out a new policy or you do a training, don't be surprised when you get complaints. And after social events, don't be surprised if you get complaints from your employees as well. So, in terms of if you're a manager and you get complaints, know what your policy is and know your role in it. Your role as a manager is not to do not dismiss. If somebody comes to you and they feel that they've been a victim of harassment, your job at the moment is not to say you have or you have not. Your job is to really follow your policy, and your policy may state that you are to get the person's name, get the name of the person who they feel has wronged them in that way, and to notify HR. You may have another individual in your organization who is responsible for tackling these complaints. Typically, it's human resources, right? And just understand that it's not your role in most cases. It may be in your organization, but it typically it's not the manager's responsibility to assess whether the complaint is valid. Uh, in terms of taking complaints seriously, one of the last things I'll say about this is as a manager, you absolutely have to take action. And taking action is following what your policy states. You don't dismiss it, you don't diminish, you don't justify the behavior. You take action and you alert whoever needs to be notified of this. That's a very important thing. Okay. So, and why it's important to take action. I should not be using a blue cup in front of a green screen. It's not working. So, okay. So, why as a manager, why do you need to take action? Because I can tell you from experience, I have terminated many managers who were aware of complaints and did not do anything. Okay. And to take it farther, because some managers have not taken these complaints seriously and have not notified the proper persons, including myself, I've had to let people go personally who did not take harassment seriously, who ended up not sharing with others what happened. So, as a manager, you have a responsibility to take these complaints seriously. You have a responsibility to set up your events in a way that's safe, also in a way that doesn't expose your company to a high level of liability as well. This is why when it comes to alcohol, things get problematic. Um, things can be problematic when it comes to these events. So, be safe, uh, be careful, and just understand the responsibilities that you have as a manager in this. So, at the moment, um, you know, I'll give it another minute. If there's anyone out there, you want to ask a question, you want to come on, let me uh, let me drop the link in the chat. Okay. 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 Going once, going twice. Okay. So it has been a pleasure. Thank you for watching this. If you've gone through this, you've watched the entire duration of this. If I can be of assistance to you in any way, feel free to reach out. You can reach me at mail at criticalconversationshr.com. Again, that's mail at criticalconversationshr.com. I'm going to put the banner at the bottom of the screen. My cell number, 239-799-1180, extension 800. Again, I'll give you the telephone number again. It's going to come up, which is 239-799-1180. Email mail at criticalconversationshr.com. Okay. Thank you. If I can be of service, feel free to reach out. Take care. Be safe. Peace and blessings.